Nowadays, when we hear the name Yemen, it's often accompanied by war, conflict, siege, poverty, and misery. However, this ancient country in the Arabian Peninsula hasn't always been like this. Throughout history, this region has been very significant. Superpowers have always sought control over it. The Sassanids reached this area, followed by the Romans, Ottomans, and finally, the British. This is due to a very strategic strait located near the country. But we're not here to talk about Yemen's history. Instead, we'll discuss one of its ancient cities, which is quite remarkable and is registered as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Shibam. The first time the name Shibam appeared in history was in the 3rd century AD. Shibam and Yemen, as mentioned earlier, have always been important. This is why a branch of the Silk Road passed through Oman into Yemen and through Shibam. Yemen and Shibam's main exports during this time were coffee and spices, which made Shibam both an important and prosperous city. Interestingly, Shibam is known as the City of Skyscrapers, but it's very different from other cities with skyscrapers. The difference lies in the fact that their skyscrapers are modern, while Shibam's skyscrapers are over 500 years old. Most of Shibam's buildings are 11 stories high, and unlike modern cities built with steel, iron, and concrete, these are made of mud. Fascinating, isn't it? Constructing an 11-story building with mud that has lasted over 500 years is truly extraordinary. When you approach Shibam, you see a cluster of buildings rising together in a confined area of 330 by 240 meters within a valley. When you realize these buildings are 500 years old, you wonder why they built everything so compactly instead of expanding. The reason is that this area is a valley, and during heavy rains, it gets filled with water. The last catastrophic storm in this region occurred in 1530 AD, destroying the city. While we don't know what the city looked like before the storm, what we see today is its post-storm reconstruction. The city was deliberately made smaller and confined to a limited area. Instead of spreading out, they built upward, a completely engineered design that protected the city from future floods. This strategic planning ensured that, even during heavy rains or storms, Shibam would remain like an island until the water receded. Over the last 500 years, this method has likely proven effective. When the population of Shibam increased, expansion occurred, but not in the valley. Instead, they built on the surrounding hills to keep the new buildings elevated. However, these newer buildings are not historical like Shibam. Looking at Yemen's map, most of the population resides in the west, mainly in the capital, Sana'a, which is in the mountains. Shibam, on the other hand, is somewhat remote. With a current population of only about 7,000 people, it's isolated from most Yemeni cities, yet it has always been important historically due to its location in a valley, where surrounding water streams converge. This has made agriculture flourish in Shibam. Despite being in the middle of the desert, Shibam is green and has water, unlike the arid desert beyond. The Greeks wrote about Shibam in the 3rd century AD, recognizing its existence. However, Westerners didn't know about it until 1893 AD. The first Western visitors were Germans, who described Shibam as looking like a rock formation from a distance, only to discover upon closer inspection that it was a city filled with skyscrapers. They were amazed and called it the Chicago of the desert, referencing Chicago's early skyscrapers like the Chicago Insurance Building, which was the first to be called a skyscraper. Unlike Chicago's skyscrapers, which were built with steel, concrete, and modern tools, Shibam's were constructed with mud. During summer, temperatures in Shibam soar above 40 degrees Celsius, drying out trees and leaving no shade. Mud was used as both a building material and insulation against the heat. Mud was shaped into bricks and dried under the sun, forming a unique construction technique. You might wonder how these mud buildings have survived for 500 years. The answer lies in maintenance. Shibam's residents meticulously care for their buildings, repairing cracks and damages immediately. Unlike modern buildings, repairing mud structures is straightforward. The first floors of the buildings are over a meter thick, gradually thinning as they rise, reaching less than 20 centimeters at the top. Floors. Wood brought from other regions is used for ceilings and doors. When you look at the buildings, you'll notice white areas on the upper floors. This whiteness comes from lime mixed with mud to reflect heat and keep the city cooler.